going on, everybody? Happy Monday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets powered by FTN right here on Game Plus Network. Chris Meaney hanging out with you. Always appreciate you guys hanging out. I know it is a Monday morning, which is heavy football related, but this is going to be an NHL episode here for you today. We'll get back into the football on Mean Streets here on Game Plus Network tomorrow. Lots of football content on Game Plus Network. Of course, a great lineup over there. Fantasy footballers, Pat Mayo. We got Jake Seeley, all in football, him and Lauren Carpenter. They're giving away an Xbox X this week. Series X. I don't know. I'm a PS guy, so I don't know. But I know Jake is giving away an Xbox this week on his show. And you can catch All in Football, of course, tonight on Game Plus Network, tomorrow and Wednesday as well as our FTN Network YouTube page. So if you're looking for some fantasy football content, you're looking for some waiver wire stuff, Jake has you covered. Also, Betting with Benny, your way comes your way this evening, Game Plus Network, as well as our FTN Network YouTube page. So heavy hockey here. We're just a couple weeks away from the NHL season getting underway. So I wanted to present some of my favorite targets, sleepers, breakouts, busts, have a bit of a fantasy hockey conversation here with you guys. Any questions at any moment at Chris Meaney on the Twitter machine here on our FTN Network YouTube page. You're watching the replay on our website, FTN Fantasy, FTN Bets, FTN Daily. You can always head on over to our FTN Network YouTube page and leave those questions, but I'm pretty decent at the Twitter game. I mean, I don't have any clever tweets, but you can always reach out and I will certainly get back to you if you have any drafts over these next couple of days. The season starts in 2 weeks, little under 2 weeks. North America will start in just over 2 weeks. So it's basically here. Lots of drafts. Eric Young and I did an underdog best ball draft on Friday. If you missed it on Game Plus, it's live on our FTN Network YouTube page. Of course, you know that you can listen to this show as well on iTunes and Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to your favorite podcasts. So it is going to be a lot of hockey talk. A little bit later on in the week, and we get closer to the season, we'll dive into futures. I'm going to talk about some Stanley Cup odds here in just a second to kick us off. But, maybe later on this week or early next week, we'll have some future bets. Teams that I think will make the playoffs, that won't make the playoffs, predictions for standings. There's a lot of different draft or future specials over at DraftKings and FanDuel, for certain teams, point totals, things like that we can dive into. I'm not going to address all the point totals, but just the edges that I think, I can find. And hopefully we can have some success. It's been a decent couple years here at FTN since I started tracking some NHL bets, just over 200 units in the 2 seasons. So hopefully we can keep that going. If you're looking to be part of the FTN fam, promo code Meaney, save yourself 20%. You get all the picks across all the sports, not just my NHL picks. Also, picks from everybody across all those sports, as I mentioned, projections, tools, Discord channel. It is all there. We'll have a pretty strong hockey team this year as well. Kenneth Lee was the DFS Writer of the Year when it comes to hockey. In the past, we have Griffin Swanson as well, who's a friend of the show, and hopefully we can have both of those guys on Mean Streets in the coming near future, maybe to preview some stuff and certainly to talk about games and props and things like that once we get going here. Once the season starts. Also, Dangle Betzelli will return as well. Myself and Eric Young twice a week. We'll be breaking down the busy nights in the NHL. Tuesdays and Thursdays will help you set your fantasy hockey waiver wire lineups or, ads and lineups. You got any questions? Of course, you can always hang out with us. But it is a betting show. We roll through all the games. We talk about our favorite shot props. EY calls some goals. He loves himself some Kyle Connor. He's always calling Kyle Connor goals. I don't blame him. The guy's a sniper, right? Nearly 40 goals last year. He is definitely one of my targets. I tried to stay away from, first couple of rounds. I don't really see too many busts in the first couple of rounds. Maybe Johnny Hockey, but if he goes at the end of the second or early third, I'm actually fine with it. I think we can agree that there's going to be a little bit of regression in his game. Had a fantastic season last year with the Calgary Flames. I think we'll see actually everybody from the Flames, as I adjust the headset here, take a step back. I guess that line, let me retract. Matthew Tkachuk moving over to Florida, probably similar numbers. I'd say a little bit of a slight decline. Elias Lindholm too. That line was just so good last year in Calgary. Plus minus, they were great defensively. They had everything go their way offensively as well. And now they're all on different teams. Well, I guess Lindholm was there, but he's without his 2 wingers. And now Matthew Tkachuk and Johnny Hockey are gone. So we'll get into some sleepers. We'll get into some breakouts and some busts. Actually, I don't really have too many breakouts. I suppose I have a couple in my targets. Maybe later on in the week, we'll talk about some undervalued and some breakups in those old faces and new places. We'll touch on the outlook for Johnny Hockey, the the outlook for Matthew Tkachuk, Jonathan Huberdeau, Kevin Fiala, the two guys in net for the Leafs, Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov. So we'll touch on all of that stuff, but today will be sleepers, busts, and some targets. And we'll lead here with the NHL Stanley Cup odds. The Calgary Flames, geez, 17-1, as you see there. The Colorado Avalanche, the defending Stanley Cup Colorado Avalanche, check in at plus 380. Wow. No value here. There really wasn't any value. Not a lot of value last year. I think at most I saw it at 6-1 in terms of, the longest odds. I believe they got down to about plus 450, when the Stanley Cup finals happened. And once they got past that second round, they were really big time favorites as a team that, they've been favorites now in 4 straight years. They've been the Stanley Cup favorite ahead of the Tampa Bay Lightning, a team that really couldn't get past the second round for a couple years. And they cruised last year throughout the playoffs. They smoked Nashville in the first round. They had their way with the Blues. They got, I forget who they played in the third round now off the top of my head, but the Oilers, they swept them. And then they had their way with the Tampa Bay Lightning as well. And you see the Lightning on this list at 12-1, missing a couple pieces. They shipped Ryan McDonough away. Andre Palat is gone. Braden Point should be ready to start the season. They're still going to be a really good team, led by Andrei Vasilevsky. Nikita Kucherov hasn't played too much in the regular season over the past couple of years. Hopefully he is healthy for the Lightning, but this is a team that's certainly going to compete. Of course, the Maple Leafs are going to check in here as heavy favorites every single year. They should be 7-1 to win 4 games in the playoffs, let alone win 4 rounds. Am I right? I think I might be right. I might be right there, but no shots fired at the Toronto Maple Leafs. But honestly, let's look at them overall as a whole, the Maple Leafs, because of course we're north of the border here. Anthem Sports Entertainment and Game Plus Network, a lot of Leaf fans in the area. I do like their squad. Offensively, they're going to be one of the best teams in the league. They're probably going to surpass the 100-point total again. I believe last year was the best season that they had as a franchise. Again, they couldn't find a way to get past the first round. It's been the teams that they have played over the past couple of years have gone to the Stanley Cup Finals. If that's worth anything, the Tampa Bay Lightning, they lost last year and they were so close, right? Again, game 7 on home ice, they couldn't find a way. The year before that, the Montreal Canadiens, game 7 on home ice, couldn't find a way. The Canadiens went to the Stanley Cup Finals. I think the year before that, they played the Bruins and the Bruins got their number as well. So it's been a couple teams that they've run into that have eventually gone to the Stanley Cup Finals. But for the Leafs, I mean, this is it. This is the core, is it not? This is the core that you're working with, and the window, I believe, is small. Matthews is going to need a new contract in a couple of years. We just saw Nathan McKinnon, the most expensive or the highest paid player per year now, just I think $100K over Connor McDavid. How petty is Nate? I'm kidding, he deserves it. But these guys are going to look for more money. And Matthews, if he has another 60-goal campaign, which he's certainly capable of, he's arguably the best scorer, if not the best goal scorer in the game today. Mitch Marner is in for probably another 100-point season. These guys are going to need new contracts soon, especially Austin Matthews. So it'll be interesting to see what the Leafs are able to get done this season. I like their team a little bit less. I think their bottom 6 is a little weaker. And I still have the same question marks in goal that I've had, for years with this team. Matt Murray is a 2-time Stanley Cup winner with Pittsburgh, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy over the past couple of years. I like the buy low on Samsonov, with the Washington Capitals, a former first-round pick. I was surprised the Caps came up on him as early as they did. I think he has the upside to be a pretty good goalie for the Leafs. It could turn out to be a really nice buy low. I'm sure it'll be a committee between the two. Matt Murray's not going to be able to give them, 60-plus games. I don't think so, unfortunately, for him and the health. But he does have some upside as well to his game. Neither of these guys are going too early in fantasy, surprisingly, because Leafs goalies usually fly off the board because they are going to win 40-plus games this season. They may win 50 games this season as well. So they're still going to score a lot of goals. I like that top line. If Bunting's on that top line, all 3 of those guys, Marner, Matthews, like those guys in fantasy. Matthews is going to come off the board really early, first, second overall. I think he should be second. I think Connor McDavid should go first overall, unless you're playing in a points league that awards 20 points for 1 goal. Then maybe you want to take Austin Matthews first overall because he will score more goals than Connor McDavid. But McDavid is a little bit safer. He's got more points. It's a history now of surpassing the Central American in terms of points. And we just saw it for the first time from Austin Matthews. But you're really splitting hairs with those two guys. I'm a little sour on John Tavares. He's getting a little bit older. He was never a quick skater, but he's starting to lose a little bit of that speed that he did have. And I like William Nylander, but it's pretty weak after that. There's not really a lot there that I like from a fantasy standpoint. Morgan Riley's going to be fine. Mark Giordano, they brought back on a cheap contract. We'll see what they are able to do with Sandin and if they can bring him back and get him going before the season starts. They're kind of running out of time, but that's my Leafs talk for you. They're going to make the playoffs. I'd say they win the division. It's all going to be about the first round. It's going to be about the playoffs. What can they do? Can they find a way with this core to eventually get over the hump? And I don't know. I'd say they win around this year. I say they win around, but it's still going to be tough for me to give them the benefit of the doubt against some of these teams that they'll play in the playoffs. I say they could beat the Panthers. The Lightning are going to be tough again, as I mentioned. The Rangers I look for the Rangers to maybe take a step forward here. Igor Shesterkin, very, very strong in goal. Kreider probably takes a bit of a step back offensively, but they still have a really good top six. Vincent Trocheck, I do believe, is an upgrade over Ryan Strome. I think he's a better two-way player than Ryan Strome. Adam Fox has proved to be an elite defenseman in this league as well. And you just look for some of those kids, Alexis Lafreniere, Kako, these guys to kind of step up. Hedl, the kid line, to step up and provide a little bit more offense. Sammy Blais, a player that I actually like. I like the addition of him from St. Louis. I think, Pavel Buchnevich is certainly a better player. It was a weird trade, but I did like the addition. I think it was, some much needed sandpaper that this team needed, and they didn't really see a whole lot from him last year. So hopefully Rangers fans could see Sammy Blais play a little bit more. Not that he's a great fantasy asset, but, he'll provide, a bit of a spark inside that top six at times, I do believe. We're looking for value on this board. The Panthers really, I think they took a step back this season. Losing Jonathan Huberdeau and getting Matthew Tkachuk, it's fine. It was a really surprising trade. I know that they're strapped against the cap. All these guys are making, a bunch of money, and they signed Sam Bennett and Bobrovsky's, doubled, $10 million is. It's the reason, I guess, that Huberdeau is gone and he signed that extension with Calgary. They just weren't going to be able to make it work with him. But I was surprised, they also gave up on Mackenzie Weegar. Not that Ben Chiarot was great, but he's off the roster. Claude Giroux is off the roster. They're missing a lot of pieces. I still think that they're going to be one of the most high-powered offenses in the league and dominant at home, just like they were last year. Man, we hammered a lot of 6.5 overs when Florida was playing at home last year. It was kind of the thing, right? Puck line Panthers and the over at home, and it hit pretty consistently last year. I think they started off with like 22 wins in their first 25 or 26 home games. They were electrifying at Sunrise. But they'll take a step back. Don't really like their defense overall. I think that's where they really will take that step back. Carolina's solid, always solid. It's another team just like the Leafs, really. They can't find a way to make noise into the playoffs, where they, whether it's goaltending or not scoring enough goals. They acquired Max Pacioretty, and then he blew out his Achilles, and he's going to miss a big chunk, if not all of the regular season. So that's a big loss. But they are strong in the blue line. They get Brent Burns, who is a definite upgrade over Tony DeAngelo. So this team will hang. There's no question. The Carolina Hurricanes. I think that's decent odds there at 11-1. I see some 13s and 14s in our prop shop parlay calculator. Check that out over at ftmbets.com to get the best possible odds. This is from DraftKings here. The Edmonton Oilers, pretty good value here at 16-1 as well. They make the swap from Mike Smith to Jack Campbell. I do believe that's an upgrade. I think for Jack Campbell, whatever he gave you last year as a fantasy owner, I think you can expect the same thing from Jack Campbell this season. Part of a high-powered offense with the Edmonton Oilers, some question marks on the blue line, just like in Toronto. But overall, I think it's a pretty good defensive core, right? I'm not crazy about Tyson Barrie from a defensive standpoint, but Evan Bouchard is only going to continue to grow, and Darnell Nurse as well. So they do have some players on the back end, and they're going to be they're going to hang around, right, in most games with that offense that they have. And Leon Draisaitl, they brought back Evander Kane and Connor McDavid and Zach Hyman. Maybe they get a little bit more from Kailer Yamamoto. So there's a lot that the Oilers have to offer offensively. I think it's a decent pick. At 16-1, especially if they get off to a hot start. They're a trendy team. You got McDavid, you got Draisaitl there. It's a popular market in Edmonton. It's a hockey city, right? I've been there to a few games. It's a really good time. They're passionate about the Oilers, and I think that's part of why the Leafs are 7-1 as well. I don't think anybody thinks that they're like I don't know, legitimate Stanley Cup contenders. I can't say it with a straight face, but people are going to bet them, right? Just like they'll bet the Oilers. So we could see this number drop to like 12-1 if they get off to a hot start. I think it's decent odds there. Again, they went to the third round last year. They were certainly outmatched when it came to the Colorado Avalanche. They were outmatched, and there was everybody was outmatched against Colorado. Even the two-time defending Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning were outmatched against the Colorado Avalanche. But this Oilers team, they surprised me when they took care of the Calgary Flames. I personally think the Flames have a better team, but I thought that they had a better team last year as well, and I totally ate that loss. I think they're stronger in goal with Jacob Markstrom. I love the addition of Uyghur. I like Noah Hannafin. I like Rasmus Sandin. I really like their defense overall. Offensively, they certainly are. It is a bit of a drop off, right? Even though they got Nazem Kadri and they got Jonathan Huberdeau, I definitely like them better down the middle this year. Mikhail Backlund as their second line center just wasn't cutting it for me. Now is a third line center. You got Huberdeau with Lindholm, Toffoli, who's a proven goal scorer, can play on that top line. Andrew Mangiapane is, I think, maybe he's not a proven goal scorer, but over the past couple of years, all he's done in the NHL is score goals. And then you got Kadri, as I mentioned, in the middle there. So, they definitely are going to miss Gaudreau and miss Tkachuk, but Huberdeau is going to provide a lot of offense. And Nazem Kadri is a great center, a great two-way center. So I still think the Flames are very much alive. And I would never have thought about picking the Flames to win the Stanley Cup this year or getting involved with their odds this year compared to last year. Last year, I loved, especially the additions. I liked the Toffoli addition. I thought Yarncrook was a sneaky little addition. It didn't work out, but at the time, 25-1, I think were pretty good odds. And we got closer to the season as 10-1. When I found out that they weren't going to make it work with Johnny Hockey and Matthew Tkachuk went away, I didn't even look, but I bet you they were 40 or 50-1. I think the Flames did really, really good, considering that those two guys, franchise players, wanted out and they couldn't make it work. And everybody in the NHL knew that Tkachuk wasn't going to sign an extension. So the Flames kind of had their backs against the wall. I thought they did very well in that trade. And for them to able to land Nazem Kadri is a really big win for them as well. So the defense is strong. They're strong in goal. Sutter's a really good coach. I think the Calgary Flames, again, do have, pretty good odds there. What do we see? 17-1. I think that's pretty solid there for the Calgary Flames. The Minnesota Wild, I don't like the loss of Kevin Fiala. Really need the kids to step up, whether it's Marco Rossi or Matthew Boldy. These guys really need to step up. I don't think I'm going to fall for Minnesota this year. They decided to keep, Marc-Andre Fleury, who's a proven winner, a little bit older at this point of his career. Cam Talbot was really good for them last year. He's gone. So it's not going to be a great 1-2 punch between the pipes, but, I say Fleury still starts 50-plus games. I think he's a decent fantasy target. I don't mind the D that they have in Minnesota. Obviously, Kaprizov is a stud. Zuccarello's showed great chemistry alongside Kaprizov. Ryan Hartman had a great year. Can he back that up? Joel Eriksson Ek is a great two-way forward, better known for his defensive play, but can put the puck in the net as well. They do have some pieces, and they'll hang here. But, I don't know. I don't know if I would like them in a series against Calgary or Edmonton, and the Blues certainly have their number. They're down here at 40-1. Didn't really lose a whole lot of pieces to be 40-1. I mean, David Perron certainly has gone from the roster. They got a lot of kids as well. I mean, Tarasenko, Buchnevich, and Thomas, it was a really good line for them last year. Jordan Kyrou is going to be inside the top six for a big chunk of the season, if not all of it this year, which really wasn't the case last year. He had a bit of a breakout campaign last year. I think he has more to offer. I think there's good value on the Blues there. I'm not sold on their goaltending, for Jordan Binnington. But I think if we're looking for a long shot, they do stand out. The Kings, to me, at 35-1, I really, really like this LA squad a lot. I am a fan of what they have to offer. From a 5-5 standpoint, they were tremendous. They were very stingy. They didn't give up a whole lot. Sure, there's some questions in goal, but I think Peterson, Cal could break out. But I like Quick. Quick was great last year. He's a little bit older now. Injuries have kind of gotten into his way over the past couple of years, but he's experienced. He played really good hockey last year. He's a decent fantasy target too, because he's cheap. He's going outside the top 15, 20, sometimes at the goalie position. Maybe you can get him as your second goalie, maybe even your third, depending on your format. The Kings are going to win a lot of games. They almost beat the Oilers. It was 7 games there. They almost beat Edmonton. I think they would have went on a bit of a run. I don't think they would have got by, Colorado, but really good 5-5 team, checks a lot of boxes for me. They love to shoot the puck. They dominate possession when they have it. And as I mentioned, they don't give up a whole lot. I think Adrian Kempe is for real. I think he is going to be an elite goal scorer in the league. I think he can score 40 in this league. He scored 35, I think, last year. I think he can push the pace to 40. Anze Kopitar still has a lot to offer. Nobody seems to ever want him in fantasy. He's just like a guy that's going to give you 70 points. Mentioned Kevin Fiala. Love that addition of Kevin Fiala. Plus, they have a lot of up-and-coming kids as well. I have some questions about their blue line, but if Drew Doughty can stay healthy this season, at the time of his injury, he was a top 10 fantasy hockey defenseman. I think he can, he really needs to stay healthy for this Kings team to make some noise. They really struggled, even though their 5-5 numbers were great. They struggled, defensively. On the power play, they didn't get any really contributions from anybody on the back end. And also, they just need the presence of Doughty playing 22, 23 minutes a game on that blue line as a veteran player for them to really take that next step. But Philip Deneau is one of the better defensive players in the league. We know that from his time in Montreal and that run that the Habs went on, shutting out Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, and not just shutting out those two. They combined for one goal, but Mark Stone and Pacioretty in the third round didn't even have a goal. I think they had 1 or 2 points, and then Winnipeg, they made quick work. And a lot of that for sure was Carey Price, but a lot of it as well was Philip Deneau. He's a really good two-way center, and I was surprised to see the offensive upside that he brought. He had a career year offensively for the Kings last year. He was getting time on that first power play unit as well. That may not be the case this year now that they got Fiala. I would expect, Kempe, Kopitar, Fiala, maybe a little bit of Arvidsson on there, or potentially, one of the kids and with Doughty, but you're still going to see some power play time for Philip Deneau. That was one of the better 5-5 lines for a good 2-month stretch. Trevor Moore and Victor Arvidsson there. And as I mentioned, the kids, Quentin Byfield, they got some kids there who could take a step forward. So I really like the Kings. I believe I have 35-1 and maybe 40-1 in the bet tracker, ftmbets.com. Going a little bit deeper into betting and futures here than I thought I would. Like I said, a little bit later on in the week or next week, we'll have some point totals. We'll get into some division futures and predictions and things like that. But we'll wrap up here in a second with this. I think the Golden Knights a bit of a trap at 25-1. Robin Lehner is going to miss the entire season. Mark Stone, I'm not a fully believe. I love Stone as a player when he's there. On the ice, he's great, but he's missed a lot of time over the past few years, and a back injury, already wearing a non-contact jersey in practice. I don't think it's a big deal. We'll get into him in a little bit. Spoiler alert, I think he's a fantasy bust. It's all about Jack Hughes. It's all about Jack Eichel. He's going to have to stay healthy and provide a lot, but you lost Pacioretty on this team. Pietrangelo is another year older. That Misfits line is, not the same as what it once was. It doesn't feel like it's the same. William Karlsson had that nice first season with Vegas, got paid. He's kind of had a down couple years, and then Marchessault's had moments, and Riley Smith has just had moments as well. They acquire Phil Kessel. I'm not really feeling the Golden Knights like I have before in the past, and the window is very, 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 it's here, and it's short because they've traded a lot of their picks and prospects over the past couple of years to get guys like Pacioretty and Stone and Eichel. So they've traded a lot of pieces away. I think they'd much rather have Nick Suzuki than the 2 years or 3 years they had of Pacioretty. I think the Predators are decent at 35-1. Nito, I still have some questions about offensively about this team. It's basically a one-line team, but they did get a lot from Duchesne and Forsberg last year. Nito Niederreiter, is brought in as a proven 20-goal scorer. He could, bolster the top six. Ryan McDonough is a really good defenseman. We know about Yossi. We know about Ekholm, and UC Saros is good. So this is a team that I expect to make the playoffs. So there's some long shots here at 35-1. For the Kings, for the Preds. I like the Kings more than the Preds. The Blues at 40-1. These are teams I expect to make the playoffs with these odds. And then Dallas Stars, I think, would be the longest at 45-1 that I would maybe even sprinkle on. I don't think the Devils are a playoff team. I definitely don't think the Jets are, and I don't believe that the Senators are there, even though they're going to be one of the most improved teams in the league this year, getting Claude Giroux and Alex DeBrincat. They got a really nice top six, and they're strong in goal, but they just don't really have anybody outside of Thomas Chabot who can play defense. And I don't believe the Canucks are there either, but that may be worth a sprinkle. Bruce Boudreau certainly turned that team around. They're strong in goal with Thatcher Demko, and they do have a lot of nice forwards there as well. I'm not a believer in the Caps. The Penguins will hang, but, they acquired Jeff Petrie. They brought back Ricard Raquel. Malkin found a way to come back, and Letang, they kind of got the band back together for another run or two. I think I just rather the Rangers. I think they're more sound at 20-1, more sound in goal. And I'd say the Penguins have a little bit more offense to offer, but it's not a team that I fully believe in. So even coming full circle here, like, you know what I mean? We're walking through the East here. The Panthers, bit of a step back. The Lightning, the Penguins, kind of the same, but a little bit older roster. The Rangers, kind of the same. You're looking for the kids to step up. Didn't even really mention the Bruins at 28-1. I think if you want to get involved with the Bruins, you wait. I think that they're going to have a bit of a slow start here, the Boston Bruins, because they're going to be without a couple of their key players for the first couple months of the season. Charlie McAvoy is recovering from, I think, off-season shoulder surgery. He may not be back until the calendar turns to 2023, late December, I think at the earliest. Brad Marchand is out until American Thanksgiving due to a hip surgery. So those are two key guys, right, for the Bruins that are going to miss the first couple months of the season. David Krejci is back, but how much does he really have? I mean, before he left to go play overseas, he really didn't have a whole lot to offer. He's a veteran player that they're really going to need this season, but I don't think he has too much to offer. They swapped Eric Halla, who had some moments, for Pavel Zacha. It's a bit of a sideways move. Bergeron's come back for another year, a little bit older. So I don't know. Bruins will, every time you doubt them, they surprise you. But 28-1 for me, this squad, I don't think so. So even walking through this East, maybe it is the Leafs here because of all those teams that are going to regress a little bit. But as I mentioned, I think the Leafs have question marks of their own in goal and on the blue line, and their bottom six as well. It should be a much improved Atlantic division. Even the Habs, right? I mean, the Habs are not on that list because nobody's crazy enough to put any bucks on them. We did have them over at FTN Bets 2 years ago to win the Stanley Cup because it was the North Division and they were 25-1. And I just thought that they were going to be top four. And I just figured, there's not a lot of great Canadian teams. If somebody knocks off the Leafs, they could get by, the Oilers or the Flames and the Jets and maybe get to the third round. I think that's pretty good value. And it worked out. You were able to hedge on the Lightning. But the Habs are improved, believe it or not. I don't think they'll have as bad of a season as they did. The Red Wings are improved. The Senators are improved. And those teams up at the top that I said, maybe a little bit of regression, they're still going to be really good teams. Like Vegas has Toronto's 100-point team, the Lightning, the Panthers, 100-point team, the Bruins right there as well. So it's going to be a very competitive Atlantic division. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on who you would like, who you see as, again, we'll show it here one more time before we move away from it. Stanley Cup odds. Who checks out to you? Where's the value? Just to wrap up, I think Oilers and Flames, some value there. I believe the Kings and Predators and the Blues and potentially the Stars, right? They're still a good team, 5-5. They don't score enough for me, but Ottinger proved last year he's going to be a really good goalie in the league. They almost got past the Flames. Probably should have, to be honest with you. But they just couldn't score. And that's a thing. That's going to be kind of their Achilles heel, is that top line with Rupe Hintz and Robertson, really, really strong. Pavelski's a year older, but still has a lot to offer. You need more from Sagan and Jamie Benn, and maybe Mason Marchment can add them a little bit more firepower offensively. But they did lose John Klingberg on the back end. But I view them as a playoff team, 45-1. I think they can get there. Let's look at some sleepers. Let's start here with sleepers, fantasy hockey sleepers. You can make the case for, a lot of players to be like, for me, sleepers is kind of like a trendy, buzzy word. What it means to me is undervalued. It means that these players, I think, will outdo their draft position. Now, whether it's Yahoo, ESPN, Fantrax, Underdog, I tried to scan all sites that you guys could potentially be drafting. And I just looked at players that I feel are going a little bit later than they should. And you'll see some players that are targets of mine that we could call sleepers. We could call, some players undervalued as well. It's all the same. It's just players that I think are going a little bit too late that could return some value. So you see Jacob Vrana there up at the top. This is really in no order, even though my guy George did order them here. This is really just players I like, players I'm going to have the targets of. And as I mentioned, players that I think, will outperform their ADP. So we'll start with Vrana. 21 goals in 37 games with the Red Wings dating back to 2020 when he was acquired in that Anthony Mantha deal, a bit of a surprising deal, but Vrana's been the better player in that deal, and he's had a couple 20-goal seasons with the Washington Capitals, before the trade, 24 goals and 25 goals. He just scores goals. I don't think he's going to be able to keep up the pace, like 21 and 37 games. I don't feel like he's a 40-goal scorer. and his shooting percentage has been pretty high over the past couple of years. Like 20% is probably not a number that he can get to again. But as I talked about earlier, the Red Wings are improved offensively. Like that top line is great with Bertuzzi and Larkin and Lucas Raymond. But they've bolstered their second line here, David McCron and Andrew Kopp. And that's who I see Vrana playing with inside the top six with those two, maybe at times up with Larkin, maybe on that first power play unit. Maybe he can quarterback that unit with Moritz Seider and then Larkin in there and Perron. I think that's very possible. So Vrana's pretty cheap. And we haven't seen a whole lot from him over the couple of years because of injuries. But it's not going to cost you a whole lot. And if it suffers an injury or it gets off to a slow start, you can easily make that swap and away you go. Andrew Mangiapane. I'm really shocked that this guy, he's going undrafted in some leagues. Not in any leagues that I'm in, but his ownership, I know it's fairly early. I'm seeing very, very low on Yahoo and ESPN. So that's how I feel like he is going a little bit undrafted. And I'm kind of surprised. 35 goals last season, 18 and 56 games in 2021, and 18.9% shooting rate last season. A tad high, but it was 19.8% 2 years ago. I don't know if he gets to that number, but I believe he can touch 30 goals again. And the reason I like him this season is really what I talked about earlier with the Calgary Flames. With the Calgary Flames, the centers. Basically, Mangiapane, sometimes he was in the top six playing on the second line, but most times he was playing on that third line with Mikhail Backlund. So now you got Kadri, you lost Johnny Hockey, you lost Matthew Tkachuk. There's a spot here for Andrew Mangiapane, whether it's on that first line with Huberdeau and Lindholm or it's on that second line with Matthew Tkachuk. And there's no doubt he's going to have an upgrade at the center position. So this kid is a goal scorer. He's a volume shooter. He's not going to get you a lot of assists. He's not going to, throw his body around all that often, but he's going to provide some offense. And Tyler Toffoli is another guy. I would expect Toffoli to be on that top line, at least get the first crack at being on that top line or on that first power play. But Mangiapane could, get up there over Toffoli. I think he's a little bit quicker, a little bit more wheels. I think he can get on that first PP. I believe Toffoli will stay there because he is a sniper and is a proven goal scorer. But I think both of those guys, Mangiapane and Tyler Toffoli, are really good targets here. Carter Verhaeghe, same sort of deal, right? He's just going to play inside the top six. I mean, Huberdeau is gone. Last year, he spent a lot of time at 5-5 with Alexander Barkov. He scored 24 goals, 55 points last season. Nobody seems to care. Nobody's really talking about him. Nobody's drafting him. Eric Young and myself had a conversation about him on Friday's episode where, when we were drafting on Underdog, he took him in the last round. I thought it was fantastic. And he took him just ahead of me because I wanted a Panthers stack. And I had Tkachuk and Barkov in my first two picks. And I thought to myself, I'll get Verhaeghe late. And, away I go. The one downside, I guess, is power play time. He probably won't get much. I could see him getting maybe a little bit more now that Giroux and Huberdeau are gone, but not on the first unit. I don't think he will. But 18 goals in 43 games in 2021. I think he can flirt with 30 here, just like Mangiapane. I think he'll start the season with Barkov and Matthew Tkachuk, and he had a pretty good playoff run as well. He had some really nice moments for the Panthers in the playoffs. He's a really sneaky good player. Let's see if he can get some PP time. Boone Jenner, Chandler Stevenson, Vincent Trocheck, Arturi Lehkonen, Igor Sharangovich, Matt Boldy, Mason McTavish, Canadian hero there. I think he's going to crack the top six in Anaheim. It's a bit of I don't think it is that risky because it could be your last pick, your second last pick. I think in keeper leagues and dynasty leagues, you want to have some shares of this guy. I don't know if he gets up on that top line with Troy Terry and Trevor Zegras, but he should play in the top six. You got Vetrano there. You got Ryan Strome. It's a bit of a different top six. They should score some goals. The power play should be better with John Klingberg. Should be better with John Klingberg. Boldy's just a guy that I like. If you guys been following my work, he's a volume shooter. He's a sniper. He's got a heavy shot. He's got a really, really nice shot. I think people are going to be surprised with how many goals this guy scores in the league. Again, there's some questions about Minnesota's second line, but he's going to get some opportunity, especially with Fiala gone. He could get power play one time, which is something that he got last year at times, actually, into the playoffs, even with Fiala there. So look for Boldy maybe to break out. Sharangovich, I think you're going to want to keep an eye on the camp here in New Jersey, because they have a lot of kids that could step up. Alexander Holtz is a guy that could step up. Dawson Mercer is a guy that can step up. So I think you want to pay attention. Of course, we'll pay attention here on the show for the camp and preseason and how the lines are shaping out in New Jersey. But I'm all about Jack Hughes, and Sharangovich played a lot of hockey with Jack Hughes over the past couple of years. 16 goals in his rookie season. No sophomore slump, really. Started off slow, but 24 goals is where he finished last year. He went from 30 points to 46. The downside is kind of like for Hagee, not a lot of power play time. He's certainly not going to get PP one time on this squad, but he is a proven goal scorer, and I think I'm pretty confident to say that he's going to be a volume shooter in this league. I could see him over 200 shots if he can stick inside that top 6, and I think I can see him getting another 25 goals. If he could stay healthy and Jack Hughes can stay healthy, that's a duo that I think, could really light the world on fire in New Jersey. My thinking here with Stevenson, he's got center and right eligibility. He should get left. I think he starts the season on the left side with Mark Stone and with Eichel, no Pacioretty there. Phil Kessel's brought in. He's a right winger. They can do some things, maybe move him on his off wing. I think they keep that Misfits line together as a second unit. So Stevenson had a nice breakout campaign last year. 21 goals, 64 points, 14 power play points, all career highs, 19-18 per game. Definitely a career high for him as well. Plays in all situations. So he's pretty cheap. And then Boone Jenner. Boone Jenner is just a guy that has... he's actually been, a shout out to Andrew Reed and the crew over at Anthem Sports Entertainment, who's listened to me ramble for way too long in my day here. He's a touch 'em all guy. Touch 'em all. We used to have a podcast over at Anthem Sports Entertainment called Touch 'em All. Touch 'em all, Joe. You'll never hit a better home run in your life. I like players who hit all categories for you. And Boone Jenner is not going to cost you really anything. He's multiple 20-goal scorer. He is coming off a career season. He can win you a face-off. He can get you penalty minutes. He'll drop the gloves. He's captain of the squad. He'll definitely drop the gloves. He throws his body around. He plays on power play, plays on penalty kill. He blocks shots. He does a lot for you overall. He touches a lot of categories, that Boone Jenner. And just taking a look at career highs for him. Actually, not career highs in terms of goals. He had a 30-goal campaign before, but 23 goals and 21 assists last season. Actually, none of those were career highs. So just go to show that he can give you a little bit more than that. And he did that, 44 points in 53 games, chipped in with 80 hits, 10 power play points. He had 160 shots and 56 blocks. He's got 3 seasons with 200 plus hits. He's got 2 seasons with 200 plus shots. And he could open up the season centering Patrick Laine and Johnny Hockey. Sign me up. Johnny Gaudreau may not be able to duplicate a season from last year, but he's going to make players around him better, including Boone Jenner, including Patrick Laine, who is a former 40-goal scorer. So I'm in on Boone Jenner. If it turns out that he's not centering the number 1 line and Cole Sillinger is, that's a guy you're going to want to have on your radar as well. Whoever is getting that top line, they're going to definitely provide some value to your fantasy hockey team. So that's it for the sleepers. I think we've rolled through them all. Vincent Trocheck, just maybe a bounce back season, a quiet 20-goal season from him last year. Maybe better line mates. If he plays with Panarin, then certainly better line mates. And then Arturi Lehkonen. Yeah, I should definitely touch on Arturi Lehkonen. The Avs extended him. He was great in a very small sample size with the Colorado Avalance. He had 6 goals and 9 points in 13 regular season games. 16.26 per game was the most he played since 2017 and 18 with the Habs. And the Avs leaned on him more in the playoffs. He had 8 goals and 14 points in 20 postseason games. He played even more at 1707. He got power play time with the Avs. And at times on the first unit throughout the playoffs, it was mostly because Kadri was hurt, but that he didn't sniff any power play time with Montreal. They didn't let him play in the power play in Montreal. Maybe they should have. He's a really, really smart hockey player. I love the addition right away. He played a lot of hockey with Nate McKinnon last year. I think he's going to start this campaign with Nate McKinnon, maybe Mikko Rantanen. At times they'll go Rantanen and Landeskog and McKinnon, and then they'll drop down Lehkonen. So there'll be some highs and some lows, but I think there'll be more highs than lows. And he scored 18 as a rookie. I think he can get 20. And like a lot of guys on this list or that list, basically free. Here's some players I'm avoiding, some busts. Mark Stone, again, I said earlier, really good player, real life player, fantastic. He really is a good hockey player. But now over 30, back injury last year, and he's still going pretty early. In Underdog Best Ball, a couple of drafts, I saw him go outside the top, 10 rounds. And I think that's decent value, but I just don't really want him unless he's going to fall that far. And for the most part, he's not, because people like Vegas players. And as I mentioned, he's a good hockey player. And when he's on the ice, he's contributing. And he was almost a point per game player last year. But the problem was he was limited to 37 games. And the other problem for me is a pass first guy. And I like to target volume shooters and goal scorers. I mean, he's had, I think 23 goals or fewer in 7 of his last 9 seasons. He's never had a season with more than 168 shots. He's never had a season with more than 56 hits, which is not the end of the world. But Yahoo has him ranked as a top 40 player, and I have him outside my top 75. If he falls, great. If you're playing in a league with just points, giddy up. But if you're playing in a league that allows more or that awards more points for goals and for shots, he's probably not the player for you. Just like Malkin. Again, a lot of these guys, some of them are injury riddled, got a bit of a history. Unfortunately, I don't like to bring that up, but TJ Oshie, Malkin, Stone, these guys are just players I don't trust. Oshie's, he's a great real life player. When he plays, he contributes, but he just hasn't done a whole lot over the past couple of years. And same with Malkin. Malkin's only played 70 plus games once since 2011, 2012. And he's going around guys like Jack Hughes, Josh Norris. I'd rather have Norris and Hughes. When Malkin plays, he's basically a point per game player. He definitely still has that upside, but I don't think he's really worth the risk. If these guys are going to fall outside the top 12, I'd rather take Malkin. He shoots the puck a little bit more. I think he's going to score more goals. As for Kreider, Kreider and Duchesne, I think these guys can be decent targets. Inside the article over at ftnfantasy.com, where you can get the hockey package, you can, use that promo code Meaney, save yourself 20% off. Duchesne went in the 13th round. At that point, he's a steal, actually. He's a really good value. I have no problem taking him in the 7th or 8th round, to be honest with you, if he's going to fall that far. But 43 goals, career high, 86 points, a career high for him last year. He broke his previous high of 30 goals and 70 points set back in 2015. He had a career high 19% shooting rate. For his career, it's 13.2. So we're going to see him regress just a little bit. There comes a point where, maybe the room is really sharp and they're in on him regressing and everybody avoids him. There comes a point where all of a sudden he returns value and he becomes a valuable player, and then you can jump on him. I think it's after the 5th, 6th, 7th round for Duchesne. I mean, that best ball, I don't know what I was doing. I was snoozing on Duchesne. I was thinking about him in the 13th. He went just before me. But man, at that point, pretty good. Like, I think he can score 30. I think he can get to 30 and 60. I don't know if he's getting to 86 and 40, but he can score 30 for you. For sure. Giroux's is going a little bit too early too. This is more like, hey, these are good real life players. Giroux's going to provide a lot of offense to Ottawa. He's going to get a first power play unit. He probably plays on the second line there with Stützle and DeBrincat. It looks like a pretty good line to me, if that's going to be the trio, or if he's going to play up top sometimes with Norris and Brady Tkachuk. It's going to be a really strong top 6 in Ottawa and a good power play, but another pass first guy, a little bit older at this point of his career as well. Quinn Hughes, just understand your settings. That's it with Quinn Hughes. He finished tied for 8th among defensemen in points. He had 68 points. It's just, if you're playing a league with shots and hits and blocks, he's not going to return value for you. He's getting drafted as a top 10 defenseman, which I do believe he is overall. If you're playing with just points, you're not really caring about hits and blocks and shots, and great. You only had 150 shots, 19 hits, and 56 blocks last year. He had 31 power play points, but they're all assists. He's got 77 power play points in his career. 74 of them are assists. The kid does not like to shoot the puck. Again, great player, great real life player. Just know your settings. Going around Hughes, Jason Robertson, Philip Forsberg, Nikolai Ehlers, Kevin Fiala. I want goal scorers early. Goals dry up in drafts. They're hard to come by. Go and get yourself some goal scorers in the first few rounds. There's other defensemen that you can get over Quinn Hughes. Bobrovsky, as I mentioned, I think the defense just takes a little bit of a step back. So I'm a little worried about Bobrovsky overall. Plus, Spencer Knight is a top prospect. He hasn't showed us that he's a top prospect yet. He's had some moments, but ultimately he's knocking on the door. I'm coming for you, so it could be a 60-40 split. Bobrovsky's getting drafted as a top 10 defenseman or top 10 goalie. And depending on where you look, I saw a really high ADP for Spencer Knight just behind Bobrovsky. That's a trap. I don't think you want either of these guys. But if Spencer Knight falls outside the top 15, 17, 18, then I think there's some value there to be had. I think Bobrovsky will be the starter. I think Spencer Knight is the goalie of the future, even though they got Bobrovsky locked up long term. Spencer Knight is a guy that I think you can buy low in keeper leagues and dynasty leagues, but I wouldn't be drafting him as a top 10, top 12 goalie. The other guy you saw there was Darnell Nurse. I'm a big Nurse guy. I just didn't like the change, at D. I saw some things when Woodcroft came in and he took over behind the bench. I saw Darnell Nurse lose all of his power play time. I saw him and Bouchard's ice time drop down both respectively. But for Nurse, he was going from nearly 2 minutes per game on the power play to 1. And then in 10 games in April, he averaged 2 seconds per game. And then in the playoffs, he didn't really play on the first unit. I know he was dealing with an injury, but Bouchard's got some offensive upside. He got some power play time in February when that coaching change happened. He went up to 2 minutes per game on the power play. I think February and March, both 2 minutes per game on the power play. it was Barry who was getting a lot of the top power play time, but it was Bouchard who was getting that second unit. I think overall they wanted to scale back a lot of minutes for Nurse. I still think Nurse could get some power play time, but Bouchard and Nurse, I don't think the gap should be that wide. It reminds me of Garrett Wilson and Elijah Moore. I said that on the show. Why is Elijah Moore going so far ahead of Garrett Wilson? It's only 2 weeks, only a couple weeks in the NFL. Watch the mic here. But that gap, as we see now, it shouldn't have been that large. And Nurse was right there, or Bouchard was right there with Nurse. I think he finished with just 31 fewer fantasy points in a standard point setting that rewards hits and shots and blocks. And he had more goals. He had more points. He had more power play points. He had fewer hits, and he's going to have fewer hits. He did play 10 more games, but there shouldn't be that big of a gap. Nurse is going as a top 10 defenseman. Bouchard's going around defenseman 20. Maybe a pass on Nurse, unless your league really is heavy bangers league. He's still going to provide a lot of hits and shots. Maybe you pass on Nurse, though, and you take Bouchard. That's kind of why I view him as a bit of a bust, because I think Nurse is closing the gap. He's got more to offer. Maybe not more than Nurse, but more in his game. And I think he has just as high, if not a higher, offensive ceiling, actually. It's just those gritty categories. I think that's why Nurse goes ahead. If it's just a straight points league, just take Bouchard a couple rounds later. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. I know we had some fun. We didn't get to targets, but later on the week, we'll talk targets. We'll talk undervalued players. We'll get into some futures as well. So I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. And I know it's usually a heavy Monday football here, but I wanted to talk some hockey with you guys as we're getting so close to the NHL season. So thanks for taking the time to hang out. Promo code Meaney. Save yourself a little bit of cash on that fantasy hockey draft kit. It's just a handful of bucks. And if you have any questions at all, you can always reach out at Chris Meaney. Enjoy the Monday Night Football game. If you're looking for picks, check out ftnbets.com. All in football, betting with Benny, FTN Network YouTube page, and all the great content on Game Plus Network. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Cheers.